the impact of tillage on the risk of frost in viticulture.
Guillaume Delanouille, a viticulture engineer at the French Vine and Wine Institute.
Over the last 10 years, spring frosts have become increasingly frequent. So, of course, there are physical control methods that are becoming more and more effective, but in addition to these, we can also add a range of passive control methods depending on our technical itinerary. Empirical studies have shown that 25% more humidity in the buds can lead to up to 50% more frozen buds. So humidity really is a factor to be taken into account when there is a risk of spring frost. We also know that April is the period when we're going to be retilling the sub-rows, removing the grass cover, mowing, etc. We're going to have a lot of humidity, which will be released into the atmosphere around the buds. This factor really needs to be taken into account. As part of the SIGTAG project, in order to get a real idea of the amount of moisture released into the soil as a result of this work, we monitored around 20 plots, and in particular, one plot that we equipped with hygrometry and temperature sensors located at the buds in different places in the plot where the soil had been worked and in other places where the soil had not been worked. In the days following the work, we monitored humidity and temperature and found that over the 3 days following tillage, there was very often over 30% more humidity in the buds located above the tilled soil, whereas buds above the non-tilled soil were in a slightly drier atmosphere. This graph represents the hygrometry of the buds according to their location, i.e., if they are above soil that has been tilled, it's the blue curve, and if they are above soil that has not been tilled, it's the orange curve. The soil was tilled on the first day, and then we see that on this first day there is very little difference in hygrometry between the two modalities. The following day, at D+1, there was already a 30% difference in humidity in the buds, which had repercussions on the second day, with a further 30% difference in humidity in the buds above the soil that had been tilled. As can be seen from the temperature curve, this difference is highest at the coldest time of the day, so really at sunrise. That's really when the risk of frost is greatest and when humidity is going to cause even more problems. That's why it's important to plan ahead to avoid releasing moisture during the coldest part of the day. When you consider that 25% more humidity equals 50% more frozen buds, you realize that tillage really does have a major impact on the number of frozen buds. We've already seen cases of failure with mowing that took place 4 days before the risk of frost, where we had plots that didn't have the same number of frozen buds at all, just because of the mowing of a clover cover that was quite dense. The part that had been mown had almost 80% damage, and the part that had not been mown had between 15 and 20% damage, which is still a significant difference in this case of spring frosts that had a huge impact on yield. This is something to take into account to avoid increasing the damage that can be caused by spring frosts. Of course, the volume of soil moved, the ambient humidity and the temperatures during the day, and rainfall during the previous month have an impact on the humidity that will be released at that time. But the order of magnitude to be taken into account is 1 week before the risk of frost, which corresponds a little to weather modeling. At the time when we know the risk is going to arrive, we absolutely must aim to leave the buds in the driest possible atmosphere, which means avoiding mowing and not tilling the sub-row to keep the soil as moist as possible to avoid increasing the damage, which is simply linked to the technical itinerary.